Good morning.
Good morning. Session one? Okay. I'm not a math guy, but it seems like this is session 2. But
Yeah, well, if you
Yeah.
zero index, it's 1.
yeah, that's why I became a writer. Okay. Well, hey, welcome. Thanks for coming. We were a little shocked at the turnout, or when we were watching the sessionizer, because we thought like, okay, we're gonna get 5 people in a room to talk about a soft esoteric topic that has no technology component whatsoever. But if that's what we're up for, let's do it. This is my mate Matt,
Hi, everybody.
a veteran of the, I don't know what, the tech wars, the clone wars. Matt's been around for a while. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are a lot of people with my same haircut now, if that's the Clone War. Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Decuir. I'm a software engineer, entrepreneur, and I guess self-identified mini-star super fan. Like, this is legitimately my favorite day of the year, and I'm pumped to be here. I hope you are too. I'm just curious, actually, how many of you is this your first mini bar?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
All right, that's great.
Okay, so it's great, and if you hate our session, you can just get up and leave,
Yeah,
and
that's
nobody's
right.
gonna be mad about it. Like
No.
nobody's gonna be offended. It's totally cool.
Yep. It's the first rule of unconferences is you vote with your feet. So if you don't like this session, go find another one, no problem. The other one, though, the other thing that it makes unconferences like the bar camp so cool is that it's not experts getting up and telling you what's what. It's a peer thing. We're going to learn from each other, and that's what's so energizing. That it's a little bit anti-expert almost. And so we're going to want to solicit some responses from you, but we'll set you up with a little bit of the situation or what we've been thinking about. It's very unstructured. Like, this is our only slide. That's it.
This was a late minute edition too. Like
That's right.
We weren't gonna have any slides, which is a little bit mortifying for me. I like to know sort of what to expect. And
Yeah, I'm more freewheeling. So, but part of that is confidence and faith that, like, in this kind of setting, at these kinds of events, it just works. Like, you bring up a good topic and everybody's smart and everybody's engaged, and you end up having a really good conversation. It works every time. I was panicking at 3 a.m. about this, but then I was like, no, you know how this works. Every time it works out. So just like imagine the end point. So that's what we're doing.
I'm glad we're
will be a theme
early.
that'll come up. Imagine the end point. Anyway, so I'm Don Ball. I'm also, like, I've been at these forever. Not as many. My wife, who just walked in up there, she went to the first one. Did you go to the first mini bar? At the second one? The first one was at O'Gara's, right? I think it was a literal bar camp in a bar. And so if we've been doing that, our session would be, we're over at this table, and then there'll be another session over at that table, and that's kind of how it went down. So we've grown up. But anyway, so I've been around for a while too, aged, and I was in the co-working business for a while, so I got to know a lot of people because basically we housed all the misfits and solopreneurs and entrepreneurs and like anybody, like pretty much like everybody went through our doors. The place was called Coco. It is again, actually. But so met a lot of people, had a lot of surface contact with people going through and contemplating change. So I kind of I think I stirred the pot on this with you because I'm kind of at that midlife stage, and I'm really thinking about it. Like, it's a real mindfuck at mid-age, a good way, but it just has you questioning everything and thinking like, all right, if I got 10, 15 years left, how do I want to spend it, and what matters, and like what's going to keep me energized? Because also mid-age, midlife, you lose your ability to tolerate bullshit, and you're just like, so when you think like, okay, 15 years left, do I just try to drag myself across the finish line, or is this maybe a time to do something? Like, people have that question. So I've been thinking about change. I've been thinking about maybe helping other people with their change, and so that's how I came to this. And we just thought it would make a really good topic because everybody here is in a fluid industry, almost regardless of what industry you're in. But if you're in tech, definitely. And you probably have these questions like, should I be applying my talents? Should I be working for the man? Or should I apply my talents and start a thing? Or should I join a thing? There are always those questions on the career level. But there's also life stuff, right? So we've talked a little bit originally, give us your greatest hits of life changes.
Oh yeah. Well, one of them was actually moving. So 10 years ago, or no, more than 10 years ago, I quit my job in Seattle and I took a year off, and then I moved to Minnesota. And joining Coco was, I was just looking at my pictures. It was like almost 10 years to the day was like when I walked into Coco. And it was like such a, not to like, you know, give Kyle more marketing or anything, but it was the right moment, like the right place at the right time. My greatest hit. So I've quit a lot of jobs, like more than most people, I guess. I don't know. I recently shut down a business. I transitioned my career from being a data analyst to being a software engineer. And then on the personal side, like my wife and I are in the process of selling our house right now. We bought a house during the pandemic and we realized we are renters and not homeowners. So we're going back to renting. It's going to be great. And I mean, there are others too. I'm sure I'm forgetting some, but
Yeah.
the biggies in my mind, it's like, if we focus this conversation on like professional and business stuff, I think that's probably what I know the most about. Like I've given a lot of talks about why you should quit your job, and the business that I most recently ran was all about helping people find the right fit in their careers. So that's like sort of the most near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense. I mean, at one level, yes, let's talk about kind of career, professional, business stuff, but let's not exclude the idea that sometimes the thing that drives you towards change is on a different level. It's personal. So I've also started a lot of businesses and quit. Oh, many of them, all of them. So, but I found out really early that I was not a good cubicle dweller. So I got out of my first job, became a freelancer, hired some people, and then at some point I was like, this is fatiguing. So I shut the company down, gave everybody their clients and their laptops. And then they were off to the races, and I went and worked for a client, and then started another thing later. It was on and on. But then also on a personal level, I got divorced after like 2 decades, and with 4 kids, and who are all big now and doing good. But and then I remarried, and now in my 50s I had another baby who's back in the daycare, and I'm not sure about it. But anyways. And so, yeah, lots of change. And the reason I'm okay saying, like, let's talk about both, let's not exclude the personal, because I think there's some universality to how you cope and feel about change, whether it is in your career. Like, I can't tell you what scale you should feel, what should give you heartburn and what shouldn't. It's very personal. But yet I think a lot of how we know it's time for a change, how we cope with it, how we anticipate it, how we get help, how we get back onto some kind of new normal. I think a lot of those principles work the same. So that's why I'm like, for you, it's like, you don't have to tell anything, but for you, it's like, yeah, I'm thinking of getting a divorce. Okay, that's a really big thing. It's going to change a lot of other things. So it's fair game. But anyway, so that's kind of the realm. What I'd like to do is throw it to the audience and see if anybody wants, we kind of want to get a temperature check and go like, is anybody willing to volunteer? Like, what's the kind of change you're dealing with? We could do a show of hands first. Is anybody just thinking like, it's totally career, I'm just thinking like a job change? That's the level. All right, cool.
This is a safe space. I mean, it's recorded, but I don't think that anybody can see your hands. So if you're in the very back and you're like,
we're being recorded, not you. So, and then how is anybody thinking like, okay, it's not just a job change. Maybe it's like, I'm thinking that I need to become self-employed, start a business.
Or shut down a business.
Or shut down a business. Okay. That takes guts, by the way, shutting down a business. It really does. Because it's one thing to leave, I talk with my wife, Lindsay, about this a lot. It's one thing to leave somebody else's operation and go like, so long, sucker. It's quite another thing to go like, how do I leave this thing that I created? It's my own trap that I built. And so that feels weird and it's hard. So anyways, props to anybody who's thinking about that. What about like a move? You're thinking like, I'm ditching this place because the winter lasts forever. I'm going to California. Anything like that? Okay. I was talking to somebody yesterday about that and who was saying like, he just doesn't meet people. He's lonely here. And I said, there are some other towns where you can meet people much more easily. I'm just saying, environment, it's not just you. Environment sometimes has an effect.
But also everybody feels that way in the winter.
It's true. It's a tough time to catch us, right? Yeah. Okay, so what about like big personal stuff? Anybody coping with that? It could be, I know somebody here who's dealing with like faith issues, like questioning, what I've been involved in and how that works, and I'm not so sure. So personal beliefs. What other changes could we have?
I mean, we've covered the big ones, like personal stuff, professional stuff, business stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So could we? I would like to hear from somebody about What is the thing you're staring down, if you're willing to confess? And just like, how are you thinking about it? Because this is where it gets really good, is when you see, one is like to know that you're not alone. Like, even though it's your unique experience, a lot of people are going through it simultaneously. And so it's good to know you got company. You don't know them, but you got company. And then also like to hear how other people are processing, because we all are very different, but it's good to know that other people are dealing with things in a way that, like, oh, I've never heard that saying, or I've never heard that thought. That's helpful. I'm going to grab that. Yeah. So let's see if we can get somebody.
Yeah.
Let's find a victim. Anyway, okay, so job change. Who wants to talk about a job change? Okay. All right. If you don't mind, you don't have to introduce yourself because
Sure. Well, my name is Megan. This is my first min bar. I was actually supposed to meet someone here who's been here a lot, and she didn't show up. So I don't know anybody here, but I have worked in the service industry, bars and restaurants, for my entire working career, 20 years now. And I'm just looking to get into the tech field. So I've never even had a tech job. I'm just starting like a UX boot camp, and here I am.
Does anybody want to volunteer to be her friend today? There we go.
There you go. In the
We
red
got some
sweatshirt right over
friends.
there. Okay, we didn't really talk about that change. It's a career change, but it's really like jumping into a different field. And so maybe you have some feels about that? Like, yeah, can I do this? Or yeah.
Wow.
There you go.
Congrats. Well, so
Yeah.
I've been through parts of that before, but not all of that. Like I also went through a career transition too, where it was like, before I was an analyst, I did a lot of Microsoft Excel. I was so tired of Microsoft Excel that like anything on the other side felt good. And then eventually, I taught myself how to code, and I shifted into software development, and here I am today, I'm a professional software developer. So like, you can totally do it. Like, if nothing else, just feel confidence in your ability. Like, you've already started the process, you're moving in the right direction, and that is really good. Like that's like, just getting started is the hardest part. But you're also like among friends here. There are a lot of other folks who have gone through transitions recently, especially like if you're at Prime or another boot camp, like other folks who came before you who have successfully gone through the transition that you're going through. I bet there are some of those folks in the room here too that can be there to cheer you on and support you, because you're not the only one.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing. Okay, so thinking career track switch, right? That's a big one. Anybody thinking, are you willing to admit that like you hate your job and you're thinking of quitting?
Oh, here we go. I got one down here.
All right, live
He's
one.
raised his hand a number of times. Anthony. Yeah, this is you. Here's the mic.
Do I have to stand up? I can stand up. So my name is Tony. I'm a senior engineer, and I've wished that I could have talked to you guys like a week ago, because I actually I feel like I'm making kind of a big change in my career. I'm realizing that I love being an engineer, I love being in the trenches, but also I love like being in meetings and kind of being in that high level kind of spot and talking about solutions to problems. So I love being in meetings. I do. I don't like being in like, meetings where they invite the entire team, right? I don't like that, but I do like being in those spaces where I can talk on a high level about what we're building. Like, that is exciting to me.
See, you like the big picture.
Yeah, I love the big picture. Tell me what the big picture is and I'll give you a solution.
Got it.
That's kind of my mentality.
So you like to connect the big picture down to the
I
things we're
love
actually
that
gonna
because
do.
it gives a little more meaning to my work. It's a
Cool.
little better than saying like, hey, I need you to integrate this pipeline with that. And I'm like, well, why? Why am I integrating those pipelines? So I'm kind of making the decision to move from being like an individual contributor to maybe a more management style position. But I'm also a little afraid because, one, are those doors going to be open to me? I know they're not where I am right now, which is why I'm kind of moving to something else. And will I lose the ability to get down and dirty in the trenches, which is what I also enjoy? I love to code. It's one of my favorite things in the world. And am I going to lose that entirely? That scares me.
Yeah, that's a common thing, right? When you go from a craftsperson or a creator to move into like a manager of some kind of, I mean, management is where you have those big picture conversations, but you don't want to lose the thread to the actual production, the creation.
No, and I do a lot of work on the side too. And one of the things I love most about that is I'm able to very clearly see the big picture and tie it to what I'm doing. And it just feels purposeful.
Yeah.
And I know that that's also possible in a corporate setting, but it's hard to find. And I'm struggling to find that because you call it bullshit. I just call it these endless layers of hierarchy, right?
Yeah.
And these endless processes. And
it's whatever chaps your hide, basically.
Right. So many of these meetings for me are just like, well, what are we trying to do? What is the actual problem? Because the actual problem is often hidden behind this problem that we're talking about.
Right.
So, yeah, my decision is I'm leaving. I just don't know where. That's kind of where I'm at.
Okay, that's great. Good job.
Also, I'm here alone too if you want to kind of go to things together.
So two things I want to offer. One is like, okay, you're not looking for this, but just note in your head, if you were to start your own business, you get to do it all. Macro, micro, all at the same time. It's endless. And
which is a gift and a curse.
oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, none of this is like, nothing's a free ride, right? It's all, everything has its trade-offs. But anyways, if you ever find yourself saying, I'm starting a business, you'll get to think of high purpose down to like, what am I literally doing with it? Or what are you doing with this code? We have to talk. You know what I mean? Like you'll be working with others who are hashing things out. So. Okay. Another path. Keep this in mind. There's a thing called a third path, right? When you think you have binary options, I could do this or I could do that. Yeah. There's always a third path, and maybe a fourth and fifth and sixth. So just keep that in mind. That sometimes the smart play when you're thinking about change is not to just accept what's been given to you or what seems to be presenting, but think about like, is there a workaround? Is there a side door I can go through into what I'm looking for? Is there a hack? This is really important because this is about creativity and imagination. I have counseled a lot of business owners, like startup founders and people like that, and I've always found like two things if you're thinking about getting started is like, is confidence? Do you feel like like you get to do this and that you can handle it? And then it's imagination. Can you imagine that there's multiple ways to skin the cat, so to speak, to solve the problem? And I think it shows up everywhere in careers. I've seen people like hack their ways into interesting jobs, and I'm like, wow, very clever. One of them is start a business, let it fail, but then go pitch your services, and you feel like, oh, people respect you more because you had a business. You know what I mean? That's a hack.
Yeah, the credibility.
It's a painful one, but it's a hack.
Tony, I can relate to your situation because I've been there before. And I will say, like, what you're describing is you're sort of, you've gotten to the point in your current role that you're ready for something new, for like a challenge in a different way, kind of. And like, I mean, there's sort of like, there's management options, right? If you wanted to be an engineering manager or something, but there's also like sort of like in between where you're not necessarily an IC, but you're also not necessarily like a people manager. Like there are like tech lead or team lead roles where you're kind of involved in the strategy and the sort of the meta stuff about what you're working on and why you're working on it. And I mean, also as an engineer myself, like context is something that I always crave. Like, I don't care if it's the biggest thing or the smallest thing. If I know why I'm doing something, I'll feel much more engaged and involved in the, like, whatever it is that I'm working in. Yeah. More driven and purpose, totally.
And so much depends on how you are composed. Your brain, the way your mind works, the way you're motivated. I'm just curious, have y'all done like any kind of personality assessments like Myers-Briggs or Strengths Finder and stuff? I don't know, do you find it helpful to know? All right. Props for honesty. I find it helpful just because I now know, like, oh, stop trying to fix that thing that you don't do well. Like, focus on these things that you do really well and like ignore the other stuff. And anyways, it's freeing for me. It gives me permission to like just go be my best me and not try to like, patch the holes.
Yeah, I think I feel like figuring out and leaning into your superpowers is something that sort of comes with maturity. Like, as you've worked more and more, like you might reflect on like, what are the parts of the jobs that I've had in the past that I really like or that I'm really good at, and what are the parts that I just drag my feet.
Totally.
And figuring out how to like find a role that leans on your strengths and maybe doesn't necessarily touch your weaknesses as much as if you can avoid it.
I was once, my wife's going to laugh at this one. I once had a job at the U of M. I was a print project manager. Like I was responsible for details and timelines. Yeah, she's rolling her eyes and shaking her head. Yeah, that's like so not me. But I was young and dumb, and I was willing to try it. Thinking I can do anything. No, I can't. I mean, I survived that one, but like now, yeah, advanced age, I'm like, oh no, I'm not even gonna bother. Not even gonna pretend. I was in a job interview once, and they sprung it on me that I would not only be like a strategist, I would be the project manager. Like right when they said that, it was like the record scratch. I said, I don't do project management. You will regret this. So I think we're done here. Know thyself, right? So okay, I want to ask one more. There was a hand up here. I was curious.
Hold on, wait. Let me bring you a mic.
We'll get you on film here.
And Tony, my company is a consulting organization for techies, and that when you're talking about what you want to do, like that's another fourth path. I don't know. I love my company. I love my job, and I'm thinking about changing.
Oh,
So-
why?
And that's really weird. Well, I've passed the age mark of tolerance for bullshit.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at, the next 10 years as being that big chunk before you start to really calculate your retirement account more closely.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, am I going to do this for the next 10 years and then that's it? Am I going to do something bigger? So I'm trying to figure out, I could totally do this for the next 5-10 years and be probably pretty content, but I'm like, wow, is that enough?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'm just curious, what matters to you when you think about like what the trade-off is? Is it does time matter more to you now? Like the time you have?
Okay. This week I had a little, revelation or whatever. I was thinking about all the interactions I had with people this week and realizing that aside from the ones with my husband, at least 90% of them involved commerce where either I was being paid or that person was being paid for that interaction. And it really weirded me out. I thought, well, first off, I need to start calling some friends and getting more of those. And this may be a COVID problem or something, but I moved back here in COVID, so that was the thing. So I just am craving kind of a different mix in my life of interaction.
Nice. Thank you for sharing. That's great.
Don,
Matt and I were reflecting earlier that they were like, okay, what's your attitude towards change? And I was like, I kind of crave it. I like it. Like it tends to be what leads to all the interesting things. And you kind of said like you like it, but there's some caveats, right?
Yeah, but I do want to
please.
respond. So here, I want to say this, and I'll say it twice. If you think you should quit your job, you should quit your job. Like if you're thinking about it, like I mean, that's a loaded statement. There's a lot that goes into it. Like there are many factors to pay attention to. Like if you can swing it financially, yeah. Like if you're ready for a change, and it deep down in your gut, like you're not going to be able to get rid of that until you actually do it. Yeah, it gets louder. Exactly. Yeah. So I'm a big advocate for quitting your job if you're ready for a change. I know that a lot of the times, like it's comfortable, right? Like you could stay in your current job and you would be perfectly fine, but there's like a sort of like a niggling feeling. There's some discomfort, and I feel like as time goes on, you become more aware of the discomfort. And at least in terms of like my process and how I think about it, it's like you start with discomfort. Sometimes you don't even know what it is. You know that something's wrong, or you might not even know that something's wrong. You're just like uncomfortable, and then once you pinpoint what the problem is, you're like, oh, okay, cool. Like now I figured it out. Like I dread going to work. I hate my job. I'm ready for a change. And so it's like once you've identified it, then the next step is figuring out what you're going to do next. And I mean, this is like specifically with jobs, like it's easier to find the next thing because we have this like sort of employment at will thing where it's just sort of societally accepted that you put in your notice and you quit your job and you move on to the next thing. But there are a lot of other things in life that aren't quite that easy.
Yeah. Like if you were going from this job to another job, that's fairly easy, right? You're just going to change the location of your commute, or the URL. But if it's going in from the job into I don't know what, because I have to figure that out, that's a little bit harder. You said something that it struck me that like, you spoke to almost the idea like I'm leaving, but I know where I'm going, which in some ways is I have a business partner who likes to say that, you know, when you're thinking about starting a business, for instance, you don't wait for all the lights to be green between here and Duluth. You just need the first one to be green. And you will get stops, you will get yellows, and you just have to trust that you've got the wherewithal to, when I get to that block, I'm going to figure out my way around it, how I'm going to tackle it. And that's just for, like, at least in business, I think in other realms too, but in business, it's like, that's really all you can, the only promise you have is that you get to go to the next stage and solve that problem. And you'll do it again and again and again. That's the nonstop process of owning a business. So if you realize, oh, I solve problems, yeah, then there you go, you're qualified.
Yeah, and it's really just a matter of believing in yourself, like, and being confident in your ability to figure it out. Because if you don't have that, you're gonna flounder. And I mean, it's really all on you. Like, nobody else is gonna do this for you. Like, you know, you're ready to take a leap. You got to take the leap, and then you're on that. You're at that first intersection, and then you got to figure out what the next one is too.
But I think, like yesterday, we talked about, like, okay, this is rich. You have two guys who are really comfortable making changes, counseling everybody else on changes. Right? Because not everybody's built the same, and like you could have both constitutionally and your personality. It does not limit itself to change. That's one possibility, and another one. So you could be on the other end of the spectrum from us, but also maybe I can handle change, but I'm fearful for some specific reasons. You know, like my confidence is low right now. So I'm just curious. What I'd love to know is, like, if anybody feels like I've got a way, like I have a way that I deal with change that would be helpful to hear. You?
One of the things that I don't think you addressed is a lot of people's problem is not that they're stuck. They're stuck in their job. They don't like their job. But like you were saying, they don't know there's a third option. And one of the things that I found through accident was the first thing to do is to figure out what are your barriers, right?
Thanks, man.
Am I supposed to stand?
Your choice.
So if you are a consultant, you know this, 3 months to 6 months is always your pad. What I would say is the first thing to do if you're uncomfortable where you are is just start stockpiling cash, right? You need the ability to assess where you are and get the clarity. If you feel stuck, you can't see those other options. So that's the first thing to do. And I just starting to figure out what, you know, most of us have figured this out after we've lost a job, but figure out your burn rate, figure out what you can survive on and all that stuff. Once that financial burden is out of the way, I think that opens up a whole lot more of what you're thinking about.
That's interesting. So stockpile cash. No, this is good.
People do not realize how much they can actually survive on. They think that they need X, Y, or Z, but it's not until, you know, the world ends and you suddenly need to survive on X, Y, or Z that you start to figure out what your burn rate is. That's the most important part.
Yeah. I grew up kind of poor. Like, my dad was always chronically underemployed in much of my youth. And I remember his phrase, he was like, if there's no income, there's no outgo. He was always like, he could lock everything down to where we were living on vapors. Not fun as a kid, but I get it, you know, like, it's possible. Hey, the other thing too is, like, if networking ends up being really critical to how you get ahead, I don't know how you say this, you know, or practically do this, but like, the time to network is not when you're in crisis, because you smell like panic. You know, it's, you know what I'm saying? Like, do a cold call to somebody, like, try to, you know, like, arrange for an interview or an informational interview. They can hear it in your voice that you're, like, a little bit desperate. And I don't know what it is, why people get put off by that. It's not fair, but it's kind of true. And you want to be networking from a position of strength where you just, I generally feel good about what I'm doing and who I am. When it gets, you know, you're out on the street and now you're, like, trying to find something. Also, I think it shortcuts your thinking. Like, you're, like, willing to, like, entertain anything. You lose your centeredness. So anyways, network yesterday rather than today.
Yeah, Lainey.
Okay, I think this is gonna be good.
Hi y'all. My name's Lainey. So I'll share where I'm at first, and then I have something to add here. I recently got let go from a company, and I'm sure some other people in the room are in that situation. And so now I'm just trying to figure out what's next, pursuing various different things in the interview process. But one of the things that I've realized in this, like, moment of change is that somewhere in the past 3 years, I I forgot that I own my career. The company that I work for doesn't own my career. I do. And like I had let go of my sense of agency somewhere in there. So in case that resonates for anyone else.
That definitely resonates.
That's a great. Just the word agency is powerful, you know. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Laney.
I will say, hold on. I will say, getting laid off sucks. Like, there's no way around it. Like, I think what we're talking about right now is like, okay, this is like driven within you that like you're ready for a change and you make the change and you quit the job. Getting laid off is like, it's not on your own terms. And I think that's part of what hurts the most. I got laid off last year, and like in the moment, it felt real shitty. A week later, I was still I was upset, but I had cooled off. A month later, I was thriving. So it's like there's this sort of temporary discomfort. It's hard. It hurts. It sucks. There's no way around it. I'm sure there are other people in there. I know there are other people in the room who have been through layoffs recently, and that's not great. But Lainey, to your other point, yeah, like you're in charge of your own career. Nobody else is going to manage it for you, and that's also like a hard truth that I'm sure some of us have learned through hard-learned experience. Some of us are like hearing now, but you might have a good manager, and a good manager is the exception, not the rule. Like a manager who's really supportive and helping you sort of grow and sort of progress in your career. But it's rare that you're going to have that good manager. So you really sort of do need to take ownership. So strong +1 to what you just said, Lainey.
Awesome. Oh, all right. Pardon me. Thank you.
I was going to add to that. As someone who likes to change a lot, I'm now a little over 2 years at my company, and I'm like, oh, I should probably go, because that's usually what I do. So, and I change industries a lot. Like
Same.
I'm in tech now. I used to be in insurance. I'm all over the place. I still am a bartender, so I would love to connect with you more. And I'm actually on the bartenders guild here in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So I still do a lot of stuff. So something that I want people to remember is that, like to your point, the company does not like choose your path for you, but something to remember is, what is your mission and values as a person? You don't have to be a leader to remember what you want in life. And that is literally why I change all the time, because my mission and values guides me where I go. That's why I move all over. Some people can critique me and say, well, you're just all over the place. And I'm like, sure, but I learned a lot, and I learned a lot more about myself. But at the end of the day, my goal is still the same, and my values and missions are the same. And no matter where I go, that always stays the same. And that's what I speak true to myself. And I know that seems like a big thing, and I know we really don't know what we want. I don't even remember what I ate for breakfast. We all just ate together, if y'all can remind me, But it's like one of those, like, you just have to have those moments and have these talks with people, right? Like, you're not having those human connections with people because they're paying you. But it's like, have a conversation with all these people. There's somebody out here like that, right? So it's talking to those people and figuring out what it is that you want out of life. Maybe it is just to lie on a beach and, drink coconuts and just, whatever. And however you get there, let's get you there. Like, you can get there 1,000 different ways, right? So like, just remembering who you are and what you want in life and what you can achieve. It's not just about what you achieved, it's about what you can achieve.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's great.
That's great.
Thanks.
I'll add to that. I think one of the things that I've seen in running my business for the last 4 years is that people change and companies change too. And so like, what's the right fit for you now, or what's close to the right fit for you right now at work professionally, is not what's going to be right for you in the future. And so, I mean, changing jobs, changing industries and whatnot, like, I think it's hard to predict looking forward, but looking back, you can look at the common thread between those different things and like all the different things you learned as you went. So, I mean, that's what I've done too.
Yeah, I'm wondering who here has just raise your hand if you will. Who has a negative view of change? Like, hate it, fear it?
Sarah Rose in
All
the
right.
back.
Would you be willing to talk to us? I'm just curious how it occurs for you. This idea of making a big change.
Yeah. So I feel like in my life I've had a lot of changes that I don't have control over. The first 5 years out of college, I was working I was serving in AmeriCorps, and I was working as a part-time kindergarten TA. And so I was, for 5 years, living off of about $15,000 a year, give or take. And and how that affects my career is it makes me a lot more afraid to make changes because I'm like, I do not want to go back to that. And when you've had negative changes in your life, other types of negative changes in your life that you don't have control over, it makes you a lot more afraid to, step out of the boat and just, go pursue, whether it's personal, whether it's career, whether it's other things. Because I've been in bad situations and I don't want to go back. Yeah. So.
do you have? Is there something you tell yourself that, like, when you are going to do something that's scary? Is there a way that you talk yourself through it, or that you work through it?
Yeah. So I guess the biggest thing is to be like, okay, what if the worst case scenario did happen? What would you do? And being able to be like, okay, you know what? I'm not just going to sit here and go, what if that happened? You're like, okay, what if it did happen?
Yeah.
Like what? And you can, if you can see a path forward beyond the big scary things that are sort of looming over you, it makes it a lot easier to be like, okay, like I can handle this.
Yeah. Have you come to trust yourself with your ability to deal with, like, adversity and when there's big changes? Like, have you figured out that, like?
I mean, I think all of us are going to be a work in progress.
Yeah.
But I think I've gotten a lot better. I've gotten a lot more confident in myself and my ability to make decisions and not question those decisions quite as much.
Yeah.
So
That's great. Thank you so much.
yeah.
That's huge. Oh yeah, sure. All right. Request to talk louder here.
Oh, yep.
I think we're being wallflowers. Okay.
We've
Well,
got
that's really cool because I think that's a really huge factor. Is like how do you like cope with the uncertainty? Because you could get a new job and then you might find out your boss is an a-hole, and then you're just like, ugh, what do I do? So that is always a possibility. Or you start your own business and it's like, it's not working. Shit, what do I do? That's always a possibility. But how do you talk yourself through it and like cope and reorient yourself? Like that's a thing you learn via experience, I think. So let's see.
Yeah, we got a few minutes left here. Does anybody have any burning questions? Okay, we got some. I see someone in the very back.
All right, let's into the crowd. Who's that? Yeah, you go first, Matt.
All right.
So I am gonna graduate in May, getting my bachelor's, and I'm kind of like scared of the adult world. I just want to hear that it's not that bad and that I'll be okay. Basically. Okay.
Awesome, thank you. No, okay.
Yeah. So something I've been working throughout my career is chasing meaning. I feel like that's been a big theme for me. So I've worked for various medical device companies, thought that would be awesome. It was awesome for a time. Eventually it sort of became jaded and then I started pursuing other things. But it's still like this thing that's top of mind for me. And also you mentioned like, I have similar thoughts. Time left in my career is finite. How do I even know what meaning is or how to find that? I realize that's a big question, probably more than we're going to solve here today. But I feel like it may be a common thing that people are working through and it's something that's been on my mind.
That's awesome. Thank you. This is kind of extreme, but I have kind of like and my wife has taught me to think about like, 150 years we'll all be dust and nobody will even remember us. I'm like, that could be comforting actually, because like meaning it's a tough one if you're trying to come to meaning, but it's also kind of like, what's the worst that can happen? Like we'll all be fine, So I kind of take solace in that sometimes.
I'll say I have a hypothesis that when the pandemic hit, it made a lot of people reflect about sort of what was important and sort of look for meaning. And especially as it relates to like job searching and what people are looking for, I think there's been a dramatic shift in that people want to be doing more meaningful work now, more so now than before. And yeah, it's so that's a common refrain. That's like all of which is to say you're not alone. I don't have an answer for you because what gives you meaning is different than what gives me meaning, which is what gives Don meaning, which means what gives anybody else meaning. it's a hard one, but that's an important thing to pay attention to. And I guess it speaks to what we were talking about before about values. It's like knowing what's truly important to you and not being willing to compromise on some of those things. It's especially if you have a job now and you're already in a position of power to really be intentional about what you do next, assuming that that's what you're talking about.
All right. Hey, I'm Justin Grammons. I've gone through a lot of different changes with regards to starting businesses and trying out new things. And I guess just the comment that I would have is, a lot of people, they get kind of worried about, well, how do I make the change? And the one thing that I've done is there's networking, but then there's also mentorship, right? So find somebody that's doing what you want to do and ask the questions. How did you get to where you're at? Can I buy you coffee, right? Can I see you at this next event, right? Every time I've made a big change, I've always done my research on it. Just like the gentleman up there talked about, get some money in the bank, do that. I definitely agree with that. But also, explore and talk to these people that are doing what you want to do, and you will be surprised at how much information they're willing to give to you. And I will offer my hand up, because I'm going to give my card to you, that you got to network and talk to people who are doing what you want to do. So if you want to be a software engineer someday, talk to a software engineer and ask them how they got there. And realize it will take some time to get there, but start those conversations would be my suggestion.
Thank you.
It's a good way to close it out. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, it's like, believing in yourself, believing in your ability to figure it out, asking for help, and it's sort of being open-minded about what the future holds. Like, you don't have to necessarily have the answer, but you have to be ready to take the leap.
Yeah. Mentorship is huge. Like, I discovered this when I was young. I was like, why are these older people like so nice to me and interested in helping me? It turned out it was totally innocent. But now that I'm an old, I'm like, I see younger people and I'm like, I want to help you. I kind of just want to let you know that it'll be okay and there's people who care about you. And so that's one thing about the adult world is like, it's not all, it's not all like weeping and gnashing of teeth. There's people out there who feel like they want to start giving back, and so look for those people. They are out there, and they could really give you a boost and give you some ideas and networking. They can help you with your networking. So
yeah, so look around in the room if there's like a change that you're trying to go through. If you think you might want to talk to somebody else, like, this is a safe space, this is a circle of trust, like, feel free to bump into somebody and ask how they're doing, and share what you're working on too, or what you're trying to think through and figure out, because we definitely didn't touch on all of the stories and things that you're all dealing with right now. There's so many. We touched barely like the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, if we come back next year, we'll have a formal panel discussion, and we'll do it upright. Nah, I doubt it. All right, thank you everybody for coming. This is great.
Thank you.